Welcome back. We're going to talk about safety and security issues for property managers and staff. This is something that is a rapidly changing area in property management and becoming significantly more advanced and more, frankly, more important. Security officers is what we used to have, right? And now we call them life safety officers, LSOs for short. Responsibilities have increased a lot with a lot of technical advances and the changing needs of building owners. This is an area that I actually spend a lot of my time, and that is with security and specifically with protecting crowded places in the built environment. And so we spend a lot of time on counter-terrorist measures and things like that, protecting festivals, parks, buildings, and such, parades, and things like that. And so I have gotten to spend a lot of time and write a lot and publish a lot in this area. And so I hope that you enjoy this chapter. Basically, for a life safety officer in the program that they develop, there are four goals of basically any program that you want to try to accomplish. And that is, number one, preventing emergencies or security breaches. That's number one. Number two, detecting a breach early if there is one. Number three, containing or confining the damage. And then lastly, counteracting the damage. So this is very similar to the last chapter we talked about, in that you sort of have a step process that you go through, and the very first thing you want to do is prevent. And so if you can't prevent, then you want to detect it as early as possible and contain it and then counteract it. And so those are the goals that we're trying to develop. The world changed after 9/11. Domestically, it changed after the Muir Building bombing in Oklahoma City. Goes as far back as the 80s in Edmond, Oklahoma, with the post office massacre. So this is nothing new that we've had to deal with as property managers and building owners, but it is changing in its sophistication, and it is getting to be a little bit different. For instance, what we used to see was like in Northern Ireland, for instance, we used to see the demolition and the destruction of physical places. That's changed, and now that people are looking for places that they can actually get more people instead of damage. And so we've had to change our thinking a little bit about protection. So anyway, this chapter, safety and security issues, kind of goes through these things. Building a smart and a safe building, and we have lots of different things now that we can utilize to detect bad guys, and so we want to try to find out what those are and use those things, and try to be effective in using those, utilizing personnel, equipment, and procedures. So building systems, we have elevators, can be a source of problems, and so we want to understand, first of all, understand our legal requirements with elevators, and then be prepared to like have them lock up in case of a fire, so that we use the stairs and things like that. Smoke detectors, we want to make sure that we have smoke detectors in our facilities, and so that's one that we want to look at. Sprinkler systems, and there's another whole issue comes with sprinkler heads and how to handle them. Paging systems for each floor to permit broadcast of emergency services. Intrusion alarms on doors and windows. Those sorts of things are really important. Another thing that really changed our world as far as safety and security issues was COVID-19, and the workers' risk associated with exposure to viruses like COVID. One of the low risks, medium risks, high risk exposure, and very high risk exposures. So that's something that we've updated in our practices, is dealing with that and trying to do the best we can should we ever need to do that again. Okay. Let's go and talk about procedures in emergency situations. We have the life safety procedures that are generally organized into two parts. We have in-house procedures and hazardous detection emergency evacuation procedures. So I'll let you take a look at that. Disaster planning in the chapter, evacuation drills, emergency preparedness procedures, inspection procedures, communicating with tenants and the media should you have an issue, what types of emergency supplies and evacuation drills do we do to prepare for a disaster, and when you communicate with tenants and the media regarding the training and regarding the actual event, how do you handle that and be prepared for it? You should have a tenant emergency procedures manual that tells the tenants how to handle certain events should they happen. In our area, we deal with tornadoes. Other areas, they deal with hurricanes. We deal with earthquakes. Others deal with earthquakes as well. So there are specific guidelines that we want to know and recognize and deal with should we have to deal with tornadoes, hurricanes, and earthquakes. And then also in the manual, we'll have to do with accidents and illnesses. How do we handle that? Who do we call? And then we'll have fire drills to practice these types of things. That's kind of like from our school days. Good fire emergency procedures are based on these exercises. So we want to understand those. Bomb threats, poison threats, those types of things should also be considered. And again, elevators. We want to go through an elevator emergency practice to see what we would do as a building owner and manager should we have a problem with an elevator. And then criminal activity. And that's where I spend most of my time trying to deal with how we handle that criminal aspect in our buildings. Okay, written procedures. We want to have it in writing so that we can hand out the books to our tenants and have those understood by them. Maybe even have practice on using those. Okay, that's just a brief overview of the safety and security issues chapter, and I thank you for your attention.